I'm just going to take about 30 to 45 minutes of your time. I'm going to give you maximum value for that time, though. I'm going to peel back the curtain and I'm going to show you exactly what I do to plan routes in the backcountry. And it's going to be awesome. I'll do a quick introduction for those who don't know me. My name is Rebecca. I'm the founder of Hike Like a Woman. I started Hike Like a Woman about 8 years ago. It started off as a mommy blog, and we blew up and we got really fast, really quick. And then the last couple years, we've taken some time to kind of figure out what we wanted to be. I used to have a big staff and an ambassador group, but now it's just me. And I have Abby behind the scenes who helps me out with some stuff. So it's just me and my girl, Abby. And my whole goal right now is outdoor education, because I want you to learn all of those skills so you can get outside and explore with confidence. And we're also focused on retreats and guided trips. So we aren't guiding this summer because I've been pretty sick, but we'll be offering guided trips again next summer. So save the date. That's going to be super fun. So anyway, this is route planning made simple. And my mission at Hike Like a Woman is to help you explore with confidence. So I want to do that by just providing all the outdoor education opportunities. So in our free training today, I thought about what's one thing that a lot of people want to learn how to do, and that is plan their routes. So today I'm going to show you how to plan your route. And then the goal at the end of today's training is for you to leave feeling really safe and confident, because you'll know how to put together a trip plan. Start with a story, because I love stories, and this is a really epic story. In 2015, that seems like it was just yesterday, but it was actually quite a long time ago. I got a group of my mom friends together, and we decided that we were going to climb a 14er. And for those of you in the Rockies, you probably know what a 14er is, but for those of you who might not be in the Rocky Mountain region, a 14er is a peak that is 14,000 feet or higher. And they're all over Colorado and other parts of the United States too. But we decided we were going to climb a 14er, and it was going to be an epic adventure. And you know how every group of friends has that one person who's the organizer or the planner or who has the crazy idea and then like brings everybody together? Well, that was me. And so I was like, okay, we have all these moms, we all have different schedules, we all have different needs, we're all at different fitness levels, but like we really wanted to do something kind of epic for a group of moms, and we really wanted to challenge ourselves. So I thought, okay, we found a weekend that would work for everyone, and then it was time to start planning our actual route. We needed a plan, right? You can't just like hop out of the car and start climbing a 14er. Well, I guess you can, but our logistical needs were going to be a little more than that. So I started to think about this plan, and as I was putting this plan together, we realized we wanted to do not just one 14er in one day, but we wanted to climb 4 14ers in one day. And there's this circuit. So I don't know if anyone out there has climbed Mount Democrat, Cameron, Lincoln, and Bross. So there are 4 14ers that are fairly close together. And I think you can do the whole loop is just over 7 miles. And I don't know if Bross is still open. It might be closed because it was on private land. But you can do this whole like loop. As we were putting together, the plan just kind of kept evolving. And as we were putting it together, I realized that we needed more than just a get in our cars and show up at the trailhead kind of plan. We needed to get from Laramie, Wyoming, right here where I live, to Kite Lake, which is the campground and the trailhead that we were going to take to start this epic adventure. And then we needed to get back to Laramie. And there were a lot of logistics involved in between all of those. I started putting a plan together. And the first thing that I did was a simple Google search. And when I did a Google search, it took me to 14ers.org or 14ers.com. And basically, this website is an amazing resource if you're looking to climb a 14er. So I Googled it. I figured out like what routes we were going to take. I did some research on the elevation gain, what class the 14ers were, and then we would need to camp the night before. So I tried to figure out where we could camp so that we could get an early start the next morning to climb these peaks. And then I also started looking at like what the route was to get to the campsite. And we decided we were going to camp at Kite Lake, and that's where we made camp and start the hike the next morning. And then the next thing I did as I was creating my route plan was I love maps and I'm a total map nerd and I love topo maps and I always want to know where I am and where I'm going. It's a safety thing for me, but also I just like that reassurance that I can read the terrain and I can read the map and I know what's up. So then I went to one of my favorite resources, mytopo.com, and this is a place where you can actually design and build your own topo maps. And I love mytopo, and I went and we got a map for that area and ordered it, had it shipped to my house. And then my husband and I spent like a good hour one evening after dinner and after we put the kids to bed looking at that topo map and really analyzing the terrain and the route because I wanted to know that information. I think that's especially important if you're headed on a longer trip or maybe a little more technical trip or a trip into a place where you're not familiar with the terrain. And I had never climbed a 14er. It was my first 14er. And so I wanted to know a little bit more information. That topo map really helped. I had information on the route from 14er.com and then I had my map. I was ready to go. And then next, as I was putting my plan together, then the next thing that I did, and this is one of my secrets. So this is super cool. And I don't think a lot of people do this, but then I did a Google image search. So what I wanted to find out from Google Images was I wanted to find out what the camping at Kite Lake looked like. And then I wanted to find out what the terrain was like. This Google image search actually gave me some great information because if you look at the bottom of the slides there, you can see Kite Lake Campground and you see all of those cars. So all of those cars in that picture gave me a good indicator that this was going to be a very popular route and that we were going to be camping at a very popular campground, especially because we were leaving on a Friday night and climbing on Saturday morning. And it also made me think, okay, if the campground's full, where else can we park? So I got a lot of great information just by doing a Google image search. So I totally recommend if you're looking for a new route or hiking in a new to you place, do a Google image search. You will be surprised what information you can get from the route once you can actually look at it. You could also search like hashtags on Instagram, but a lot of people, myself included, we are not using hashtags when we're on specific routes. We're not geotagging things, and that's just like a digital leave no trace principle. But some people still are. So you can also try a hashtag search on Instagram. Not my favorite method. I just think a Google image search is really cool. So now I knew a little bit about the route. I knew what the terrain looked like from analyzing the map, and then I could visualize it in my head through that image search. And the next thing I wanted to know was the forecast and the weather. I did some research on when we were going and the weather. And what I wanted to know was what the weather is going to be like at the nearest town or as close to the trailhead as I can get. I also wanted to know what the weather was going to be at the summit. And then I was looking at historical averages. So I wanted to know how hot it was going to be, how cold it was going to be, how the temperature was historically would change between our start time and our projected finish time. I wanted to know trends as far as weather patterns go. Would we be expecting a late afternoon rainstorm? Would it be an early afternoon rainstorm? I wanted to know about the wind, but let's be honest, I live in Wyoming, so wind's not a big deal to me. But I wanted to know all of those things. And so I did some research on historical weather data and then the weather the day of our climb. Finally, I think that your route plan doesn't start from the trailhead. A lot of people think, oh, I'm just going to plan my route. I'm going to just take it from trailhead to trailhead. But that's not the case. I think that your route plan actually begins the minute you leave home. I wanted to know how to get to the campground and the trailhead at Kite Lake from Laramie, Wyoming, how long it was going to take, what route we were going to drive. I just did a simple search to figure out, hey, where am I going? how am I going to get there and how long is this going to take me? And that's an often neglected part of route planning. And I can't tell you how many times I've gotten lost on the way to a trailhead thinking that I knew the way to get there, and that's just not the case. So knowing how to get to the trailhead is super important part of your route plan. This was the actual plan that I put together for my group of friends. And as you can see, I had a timeline. I talked about the route. I talked about what kind of camping equipment we would need at Kite Lake and then hiking gear. So just a little packing list for everyone. We had really inexperienced hikers on our group, and then we had really experienced hikers, all sorts of ability levels. And so this was the first time that I'd actually put a route plan together. In the past, I have been like a fly by the seat of my pants kind of hiker. So that means that it's just like I wake up one morning and I decide I'm going to go for a hike or I'm going to go for a backpacking trip. And then I stop at a gas station on the way out of town and grab all the snacks. And then I put very little planning into my actual outdoor adventures. And that's actually pretty dangerous. But this trip involved a lot of detail and a lot of people. And so that route plan gave me a lot of information and kind of showed me what I need in a plan. But there were a lot of gaps in those plans, and I'm going to talk about those gaps here in just a second. I emailed everybody the route plan here. And then there were mojitos. When I was in college, I took an outdoor pursuits class, and part of that outdoor pursuits class was planning trips. And one thing I learned through that outdoor pursuits class was that you always need to have a pre-trip meeting. I asked my friends, like, let's get together, let's grab some drinks, and then let's make sure everybody knows the plan so we can finalize any details. That pre-trip meeting is so cool and it can be so fun. And if you've gone on a guided trip with us, you know that we do a pre-trip meeting over Zoom instead of over mojitos. So, that's just the way it is. But pre-trip meeting. As I was putting down this route plan together for the first time, I spent a lot of time planning this trip, hours and hours and hours. The trip was a lot of fun, and it was, dare I say, life-changing for many of the women who went with us. But I learned that there should be a really simple and easy and fast way to do this kind of research on a route and to do a plan. Since then, I have refined how I do planning. And remember before when I said that there were a few gaps in our plan? I do want to mention those before we go on. So, our plan was missing these five crucial things. So, we did not have a safety plan. We did not have a risk management plan at all. We were not prepared for any emergencies. We also didn't have a first aid plan. And I'm a wilderness first responder. So, I should have known if anyone in our group had any medical issues or like if anyone had asthma where they keep their inhaler. I should have been prepared better with first aid. I just had a first aid kit in my backpack and that was that. We also didn't have a group leader. And it was interesting because I had put the plan together, but I didn't necessarily want to lead the hike. And I didn't want to be the person in charge of the trip. And we should have identified like a different leader or something along those lines. And that came into play when we all started climbing up this mountain at 5:30 in the morning, and we just like charged hard, and we realized that we all had different hiking speeds, and some of us just wanted to go slowly, some of us just wanted to like get all the summits and get back to the campsite as quickly as possible. So our group quickly broke up into smaller groups, but we didn't have a link up plan. And I remember there was a very stressful moment at the end of the hike when one person from our group hadn't made it back to our campsite and we didn't know where she was for a little while, and that was really scary. And if we would have established like a leader or if we would have figured out how we were going to hike this hike, it would have been a lot better and a lot safer, and we wouldn't have had that stressful moment at the end when we were like, oh no. And the other thing we failed to do was I didn't have contact information. So I didn't have contact information for anyone's partner or husband back home. And so if something would have gone wrong, somebody would have got sick or injured, had to go to the hospital, I wouldn't have had a way to contact their person, right? I didn't have that information. And then so that's important, knowing contact information of your friends, loved ones back home, right? And then we didn't have a post-hike food plan, and we ate all our food on the way to the trailhead the night before and then for breakfast and then on the hike, and we were very hangry at the end of the day. It was a long day, and we were sweaty and gross and trying to get everyone and get our gear packed and reloaded and trying to find a restaurant, and it was just nuts. So we should have had a better food plan. In putting that plan together, I came up with this great system, and that's why I'm here today. I want to show you the process that I use to plan routes, because if you can plan a great route, then you can take a great nap on the side of a trail because you're feeling confident that you know where you're going. So, the first thing that I like to do, and the first part of my new route planning process, is to figure out my why. And I think that it's important before you head out on any adventure to figure out why you're going. So, are you going to discover a new trail? Are you headed out on this hike because you want to get exercise? Are you looking for some rejuvenation, some relaxation? Maybe you're like me and you were planning a girls' trip and you just wanted to go out with the girls for the weekend and you wanted to push yourself and have a lot of fun. So, what is the goal of this trip? And when I'm guiding trips, there's two goals that I have to think about. The first is, what is my why as a guide? And my why as a guide is to always make sure that my clients have unforgettable experiences and come home safely. But I also have to think about my client's experience, and in that case, my client's why might be to hike somewhere new or to make new friends. So when I'm putting my trip plans together, making sure that I think about everybody's why is important. If you're a parent out there and you're planning a trip for your family, your why might be really different than the why of your 12-year-old. So those are cool things to think about, making sure that everyone's goals, they don't necessarily have to align, but they do need to synchronize. The next part of our trip plan is talking about where we're going. So this could be um, driving directions to get to the trailhead. It could be, what's the parking going to look like at the trailhead? And then what's our plan B if that parking lot is full? In this part of the route plan, we could think about, do we need special permits to hike this route? Do I need to have a permit to park at the trailhead? And then we can use that topo map to talk about our actual route on the trail. So the terrain that we're going to be hiking. So knowing where we're going, of course, is a really essential part of any hike. The next thing is the who. So in the who, that's where, who are we going hiking with? Are we going on a solo hike? Are we hiking with our family? Are we hiking with our friends? Are we hiking with a group? Are we did we hire a guide? Are we headed out on an adventure with a guide? And I'll tell you that when I hike solo, that plan looks a lot different than if I'm planning a trip as a guide for a group of clients. Just like when I'm hiking with family who might be visiting us here in the Rockies at 7,200 feet from sea level, I'm going to plan that differently than I'm going to plan a hike with a bunch of friends who live here, because my friends who live here are already acclimated to our elevation. So the who is also a really important part of that route plan. The next part of the route plan is your schedule. So when it comes to schedule, I like to think about, okay, when are we going to leave? When are we going to leave town? Or when are we going to leave my house? Or when are we going to leave my shop? What is the departure time and location? How long is it going to take us to get to the trailhead? How long is it going to take us to do our hike? So from the trailhead to the start of our hike, and all the way back to the trailhead at the end of our hike. And then what time are we going to arrive back in town? So the flexibility here is also important, right? We want to leave some white space when we are talking about our schedule. And then the next part of the route plan is the forecast. And we talked about this a little bit earlier in the workshop, but I like to know, what's the weather at my departure location, what's the weather at my trailhead, and then what's the weather at my summit if I'm doing a summit. And I also, if I'm doing a multi-day trip, then I like to know, how am I going to get the forecast. I'm not very good at guessing the weather. That's not one of my talents, but my Garmin InReach will give me the weather report. So I like to be able to provide clients with the weather report in the morning. Forecast is really important. And as I mentioned before, it's good to look at historical trends and historical data as you're planning around the weather. And then we think about what to pack: food, our water, our clothing, our equipment, our shelter if we need one, any safety gear, first aid gear. I will say packing is more art than science, and the more hiking you do, the more comfortable you'll become with with what you pack, and you'll know what I should pack, what I shouldn't pack, how to prevent overpacking, how to prevent underpacking. That's really important. The other part of packing is your clothing and your clothing system, because I'm always dressing in layers when I'm hiking and taking layers off and putting layers on. And I see my clothing as a system and part of that packing as well. Finally, we talk about our safety plan and our risk management system and processes. And what I like to do is, when it comes to safety and when I'm putting it together a safety plan, but I like to think, what are some of the threats or some of the risks that I might encounter as I'm on this adventure, and what can I do about them? Because it's not any good just to think about all the big scary bears out there, but we have to think about, what can I do to protect myself? Let me give you an example. Last summer, I was guiding a client on a trip, and this client had traveled to the Rocky Mountains before, and she knew that she struggled with altitude sickness. So this client had done her own risk assessment, and she had gone to her physician, who had prescribed her a medication to help reduce altitude sickness. That was really cool to me, and a really good example of understanding risk and the risk management process and what you can do to reduce those risks. So she came out and she hiked 10,000 feet, 11,000 plus feet. I think we got up to 11,500 feet. And she came from a very, very low elevation place. And she did not have any problems at all with altitude sickness, because she had done her own risk assessment and risk analysis and figured out what she needed to do to stay healthy on this trip. So that was really cool. And it was just a really good example of risk management. And the other part of our safety plan here is knowing who else needs to know our plan. So, who else can we share our plan with, just in case things go south? And then, like, that contact information, like I mentioned before with my friends, like, we didn't share our route with anyone. My husband knew where we were, but he didn't share that information with anybody else because we didn't have their contact information. But knowing, like, what's their name, phone number, email address, and then physical location, the physical address of your safety contact person, is really important, just in case someone from law enforcement can't get them on the phone and needs to go to their physical location. So that is a crucial part of our safety plan. And then finally, this is a little bit more detailed, but this is just a little thing I threw into the PDF. It's my route card. So this is cool, and you can use this route card if you're going on on trips with multiple days, multiple day trips, whatever. You know what I'm saying out there. So I like to use this. I write the date of the trip, the route that we're taking, what map I used, the scale of the map, and then I like to know elevation change. And then for each leg of the trip, where we plan to start, where we plan to finish, how long that leg of the trip is going to take us, and then any route information. So this might be things like mileage, elevation change, any obstacles, like, do we have to cross any boulder fields? Are there any water crossings? Um, and then, like, where can we get water? Where's a water source on the map? And then what could potentially be a good campsite? So that's a route card. I suppose you could use it for a day trip too, if maybe you're doing some several different routes or something like that. But this is a really cool tool just to have in your backpack for those longer overnight hikes. As I mentioned before, a lot of people in the outdoor industry just talk about your route, right? From the trailhead to the trailhead. But I personally believe that your route isn't just your hike, it's everything leading up to your hike and then what you do after your hike too. I like to come home from a hike and I like to write in my journal about the experience and then make any notes. And sometimes I go back into my route plan and I make any notes about what went down, and then I use that route plan over and over again. So it kind of becomes this thing that I recycle for multi-day trips. Hey, thanks so much for joining me. To learn more about route planning, go visit our website, hikelikeawoman.com, and you'll be able to find a route planning guide and a blog post to accompany this video. Thanks again.